This video will focus on exercise 15.5 in chapter 15 on page 621. And in this exercise we're going to be creating an investment value calculator. You can see right here that they have a snapshot of what it should look like. And then let's see what they want us to do. It says write a program that calculates the future value of an investment at a given interest rate for a specified number of years. The formula for the calculation is, I notice that they give that to us, which is useful. Alright, so here it says use text fields for the investment amount, number of years, annual interest rate, and display the future amount in a text field when the user clicks the calculate button as shown in the image. Alright, so this should be fairly straight ahead. Probably the bulk of the code is going to be laying out everything within the window. Alright, so why don't we get started with that in mind. So let's work on our layout first. And we'll go ahead and we're going to create a new Java project. And we'll call it exercise 15.5. Okay, and then to that we're going to create a new class file. And we'll name it the same thing. Alright, and let's just begin with all the standard stuff that we've been doing. Start adding our libraries. We're also going to need our override. Put a start method in there. We can have our stage. Okay, so once again, my initial concern is to basically get the interface set up. Now, if you look at the layout and you remember back to some of the earlier stuff that we were doing with JavaFX, this certainly looks like a grid pane, because it certainly looks like we have a couple columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows as far as I can tell. Alright. Let's think about how that will work. That sounds to me like we're going to use a grid pane. Throw in the library right away. JavaFX scene layout. And then let's go ahead and give this a name. I guess we could just call it grid pane lowercase. Maybe let's abbreviate a little bit. Let's just do gpane. And then between all the different components that we're making, I would like to put in a little bit of a gap so things aren't touching. So we'll do set hgap. 5 pixels will be adequate. And let's also, so you got to spell it correctly. Copy paste here, and then we'll do vertical gap as well for the same amount. And then we're going to just kind of look at this systematically here. So remember that it's rows and column, and we're going to have a label and then a text field, label and text field, and then remembering that this would be column 0, column 1, row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. So let's go ahead, and it's remember the syntax is column and then row um, with the coordinates. So I'm going to jump back to the code and you'll see what I mean here. So let's go ahead and just do grid or GPane, add, and then I'm just going to directly go into what I'm putting in there. So in other words, I'm going to say new label, and we'll just say investment amount. You can put a colon in there too, I suppose. And then the column index will be 0, and the row index will be 0. So we're in position 0, or column 0, row 0. Additionally, we are going to do the same thing with a text box, or a text field as they call it here. We'll do our add. And here, now of course I haven't declared a text field yet, have I? Alright, so that actually kind of begs me to set up that structure. So now the reason I'm not doing it directly inside of here is I think that it will be a little bit more useful if I actually separate that out and pull it actually out of the start method, put it right up here at the top so it's available to everything. And the reason I want it to be available to everything is so that we can do math. Now whether or not it absolutely must be in there is a matter of how you structure your application. What my mind is telling me to do is to take that calculation step, so whatever reacts to that button, and put that into its own method. And then in order for something within, let's say, this method to do math somewhere else, there's some complexities that are created, and my preference really is to maybe just set these up as so. So watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to do a text field, get our library in there. Now notice real carefully which one I'm actually picking. And then let's give it a name, something that's useful, maybe like TF for text field, invest amount. We can abbreviate a little bit. And what is that going to be? It's going to be a new text okay. And then in very much the same fashion, I'm going to create a few more. And just looking back at the example, we're going to need 4 of them, so let's do all 4. And now we need to come up with names for everything. We're also going to need number of years, annual interest rate, and future value. So let's do num of years, interest rate, future value. Okay, all those are brand new text fields. Additionally, and you see these are underlining here, and the reason is they all need to be capital F's. If I was a little more careful, I would have caught that before I pasted the mistake over and over again. And then, since we're going to that trouble, let's also put the button out here too. And let's call this BT Calc. semicolon here at the end, and that should take care of that. Okay, so now we can come back down here and kind of resume where we left off. Now, because I have created the text field above, and this one's going to go with investment amount. The name of that was TF invest amount. So I'm just going to say TF invest amount. Let's see how it matches up there. And then we need to put in the numbers here. Now we're going to go to column 1 for the text field, and it's the first row, so it's still column 0. So now that we have these two set up, the rest of the fields and stuff are going to be basically kind of a copy, and we're going to need 4 of those. And then we're going to go ahead and make our tweaks. So on the second row, it needs to say number of years. And then that's going to be column 0 and row 1. And this, of course, is going to be 1, 1. And our text field will be num of years. And see, I'm being really sure to make sure that I choose the right one, so it's going to be this one in my library. Okay, so just make sure it's present. Alright, so let's move on to the third row. The third one's going to be the interest rate, and for that one we can just say TF interest rate. And of course position will be column 0, row 2. Of course, this one will be row 2 as well, in column 1. And then finally, this last label is going to say future value. That's going to be in column 0, row 3. And that's going to be column 1, row 3. And then the other thing that we need to put in our grid pane, obviously, is the button itself. So let's just do gpane add, and we'll do bt calc, and that's going to be in row 1, which is the second column. And then the index is going to be 4 for the 5th row. Okay, so that creates our layout. Now, of course, I'm tempted right away to go ahead and see it up on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch to one of my other applications here. I'm just going to grab this stuff, drop it near the end of the start method. And of course, you might think this is a little premature, but I don't think so. I think it's sometimes good to take a look at what you've created. And I'm going to guess at a size, given what I see on the screen. So I'm just going to go with like 400 and 250 and see how that looks. Of course, the exercise number is different. Okay, and this is just to allow us to see the interface so far. Let's go ahead and save it and see what it looks like when it comes up. Looks like we need to put a launch. Won't do anything unless you tell it to. Alright, so there's our layout, and I think that we might need a little bit of control of placement. So there's a couple issues. The one is the alignment. I think the button needs to be over this way. I think the text needs to be over that way. Now the reason it needs to be over that way is usually when you're doing text it's okay, but when you're doing numbers, the default is actually for stuff to be on the right. And that's where the decimal places align. So all this stuff here needs to be right justified. So that's one thing we need to take care of. And then it would be also kind of nice that if the whole grid pane was centered. So let's work on those tasks next. Alright, create a little space here. And let's start by doing the whole pane. And we're just going to do a set alignment. We're going to do a position, center, and I don't know why I usually skip over that, because I can have it drop the library in automatically, so why not do it? Now we want to take all the text fields and set them off to the right. And as I set up the one, you'll see a little pattern that I'm setting up here. So the investment amount, set alignment, and here we're going to put in a position where you can just say right, but I'm actually going to do bottom right, because that will make sure that it sits inside the field towards the baseline. So if you made the field taller, just trust me, it's a good choice. Alright, and then we're going to basically repeat the same thing for all of them. And let's fix the names here. So we have number of years, interest rate, future value. The other thing that pops into my head is that future value, we should probably also lock that so people can't change it. So we can just do set editable, if you remember that one. And the value, of course, would be false in this case. Finally, let's put that button off to the right as well, because that's how that is. So let's do gpane, and now in order for this to really sit properly, we need to set the alignment for it horizontally, and because it's not a text box, we don't use the same type of alignment code. We actually have a method for it, so we're going to do set h alignment for what? What we're setting it for is BT calc, and then I'm going to do horizontal position right. Maybe that should be all caps. It would fix it, but maybe I should have let it fix it. Alright, so notice that this one also needs a separate library to be pulled up, and it recognized it. Okay, never mind. Okay, I think that will help with the layout. Let's run that now and just take a look to see how it comes out. Okay, so that's real close to what we're seeing in the book. And notice this one I can't type in it, but the others I can. Okay, so that's great. Now, all we really need to do at this point is set up something to handle the event of clicking on the button. And what we're going to do is we're just going to say VTCalc set on action. And here for the event handler, of course, we're going to use the Lambda approach. And all it's going to do is call a method that's going to do all the work for us. So let's do that. Let's say calc and this one's going to be for what is this? Investment value calculator. Actually, what we're trying to figure out is the future value, right? So why don't we call it calc future value? I think that will be a great name for it. Okay. Okay, so now we're at the point where we actually need to go ahead and construct this method, and I forgot my parens there. And I think that what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set it here down below the scene. And I've already constructed the code for this, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to paste it in from all the work that I did before. So I'm going to pause for just a second while I pull up that file. Okay, and here's the code that I've got, and I noticed that as I was grabbing it that I named it something different. And I'm not sure why it's loan payment. Maybe I borrowed it from somewhere else. Just shows you it's good to reuse code. Just got to be careful when you do. All right, so here we have this method that we're creating, and we don't really need to return anything. That's why it's set for void, because this is going to display directly to the text field. And I'm also noticing that I need to make sure that everything's named the same, and it's not. So that's what happens when you regurgitate your work. And let me make all the little corrections first, and then we can talk about what it's doing. And I think that all looks good. So let's just reason through this a little bit. Notice that I'm setting up a double here, and my temptation is to adjust all the formatting, so I'm going to take up on that temptation, because maybe you'll see it a little bit more clearly if it's laid out in this fashion. So I'm setting up a double, and that double is going to hold the annual interest rate. And notice that I'm actually parsing it, and what that basically does is it reads through it to make sure that we're getting it from the text field as we're intending. Alright, so let's drop down to the next line, and once again let's fix our indents here. So then we have number of years. That's also going to get the other text that we need. We got another double here. This is going to get the investment amount. Then we're going to actually do some math. And then we're going to apply our formula. And this is the formula we saw in the book. Notice how they do exponents here with math power. Okay, so if you need to copy that, I guess you could have pasted or paused the video for a second. And then finally, we have the future value. And that is going to be how we're setting the text in the text field. So once we have the calculation done and stored into this variable, then it's just a matter of setting the text for the text field, and then we have a format, and we're using this formatting technique here based upon some of the conventions that we use for Java. So the $, of course, sets it to a numeric format. The %sign is leaving a placeholder for whatever value we calculate, 2 decimal places, and that kind of sets the whole thing. All right, so now provided that I've named everything correctly, and I think that I have, I'm just making sure that our names are matching up, because I do see an underline here that I'm a little concerned about. Let's see if we can figure out what's generating that. Okay, so this is expecting an annotation name, so it makes me worry about curly brackets. I don't think I'm having any curly bracket issues. This name matches that name. Alright, and if you notice that what this is doing here is it's looking for a semicolon, and I'm not really sure why it's looking for it in that spot, but let's just kind of walk through all of these lines of code here and make sure I have them there. And looking at it up here as well, this all seems fine. Let's go ahead and just save it and make sure that everything's going to work. I'm going to give it a shot and try to run it and see what happens. See if it actually comes up on screen. No, so it is throwing an error in that spot. So let's take a moment here. Line 48 I'm seeing. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second while I try to troubleshoot this one. And of course it's something really dumb. Now I placed this inside the start method. Not what I wanted to do. I wanted it to be a standalone method, so it actually has to go after this curly brace here. So once again, it's always those simple little things that throw you. Alright, and that looks better. Now you can see how it's not underlining, so let's save it. Alright, so let's try some numbers, and I don't know if the numbers in the book are correct, but they have 10,000, 4, and 3.25. So I got 10,000, 4, 3.25, and calculate. And it works, and that will do it. So that solves that exercise, and good luck on finishing yours.